Greetings, dear adventurers. I am Somno, your storyteller for these peaceful nights. Tonight, I invite you to return to the serene lands of Middle-earth, to the Shire, a place of green hills, warm hearths, and second breakfasts. But don't be fooled by its gentle face. This land has seen quiet moments of courage and unexpected turns in history. The Shire is more than peaceful slumber. Let the rustling oaks, the morning mist over wide meadows, and the soft sunlight upon the winding dirt paths guide us back in time, to when hobbits had no true homes, only the stars above and earth beneath. In the ancient days when the river Anduin flowed quietly through fog-veiled valleys, beneath the misty mountains and the brooding trees of Mirkwood, hobbits lived like drifting seeds in the wind. No one knew their exact origin, perhaps a forgotten branch of men, perhaps a kind unrecorded by the mighty. They split into three, the Harfoots, the Stoors, and the Fallowhides, like branches of the same tree, growing in their own ways beneath the same sky. Harfoots were small and nimble, at home in the hills and woods. Stoors lived near rivers, strong and bold. And Fallowhides, taller, forest-loving, with a knack for language, often became leaders in their westward wanderings. One autumn, with golden leaves lining the banks of the Brandywine, two Fallowhide brothers, Marco and Blanco, led their people westward. They arrived at a wide, fertile valley, untouched and wild, where rabbits danced and the fields awaited their first harvest. There, the Shire was born, a quiet promise of home. Under the soft moonlight, grassy homes rose from the earth, chimney smoke curled into the sky, and simple songs echoed through the valleys. While the world beyond simmered with war and shadow, the Shire remained untouched, a cradle of peace. Only once did darkness find its way. A band of orcs led by Gafin Bool stormed the borders, shaking the very soil. But that's a tale for another night. Pour yourself something warm, pull your blanket close, and let the evening wine carry us through the ancient memories of the Shire, where the quietest lives once shaped the grandest tales. Beneath the ancient oak canopies of the Shire, the morning light filtered softly through the leaves, casting golden patterns on winding lanes where hobbit footsteps echoed gently with each new dawn. Life here was simple. Pumpkins in the fields, loaves in the oven, and quiet tea beneath sunlit skies, as if peace was stitched into the very soil. Yet winds began to whisper strange tunes across the meadows, faint signs from beyond the border. To the eastern edge of the Shire, some hobbits swore they heard distant horns from the dark in Mirkwood. One morning, a flock of birds flew west in complete silence, shadows streaking across a crimson sky. Somno remembers it well. It was autumn, the leaves amber and trembling, and the aspen trees along the Brandywine rustled like they carried a warning. Gafin Bool, a ruthless orc chieftain from the north, had gathered a wandering force. They moved westward, creeping through low hills nearing the Shire's border. No one could have imagined that a land known for meat pies and bedtime tales would soon be touched by the shadow of war. The peaceful hills became watchposts. The hobbits, gentle and shy, learned to dim their lanterns and listen for unfamiliar footsteps in the hush of night. And yet, even amidst the creeping fear, tiny flames of courage flickered. Young hobbits like Holfast, Drogo, and Eleanor formed small patrols. Quietly, they watched the edges of their homeland under pale moonlight. From afar, they saw enemy fires, like red eyes blinking beyond the farthest tree line. Somno knows well. Stories like these are often left untold. There were no shining swords or grand steeds, but where a trembling hand still chooses to light a lantern and a quiet heart decides to stand, that's where real bravery begins. As night fell, a gentle mist settled over the thatched homes of Hobbiton. In that silver veil, the call of an owl echoed far away, and the breeze brushed through raspberry bushes, whispering secrets no one dared to speak aloud. That night, every door was shut tight, but beneath the earth, under an old apple tree near the Shire's edge, three small figures met in silence. Holfast, always carrying a pouch of lucky chestnuts. Drogo, quiet, yet eyes burning like fading coals. And Eleanor, the girl with golden hair who wore daisies on sunny days, but tonight wore a dark feather as a vow. Somno, still a wandering storyteller then, hidden among the sleeping fields of the Shire, remembers well. The three lit a single oil lamp and passed around 3 flints. In case we're separated, may the fire guide us home. The flame was small, but in the cold of fear, it was a sun. At the farthest edge of Binbell Wood, where grass reached the knees and mist swallowed the trees, the orcs finally crossed paths with the Shire's watch. There was no battle cry, no trumpet call, just eyes meeting in darkness, between souls who had chosen where they stood. No one expected hobbits to win, but Holdfast threw a pouch of wild pepper, an old family spice, that burned even the boldest predator's eyes. Eleanor led them through a rabbit warren, just wide enough for the small and brave to escape. They didn't win, but they made the dark hesitate. By morning, when the mist lifted, the folk of the Shire saw 3 brown handkerchiefs tied to the aspen tree, a sign that we have returned and this land is still ours. It was the last time the orcs dared creep near the Shire's borders. After the clash with the orcs, that winter arrived earlier than most. Snow blanketed the thatched roofs like soft icing, and the winding lanes of the Shire were hushed. But it wasn't the hush of fear. It was the quiet of those learning to heal. In the days that followed, there were no parades, no feasts. Eleanor returned to her little bakery. Holdfast kept mending fences for neighbors. Drogo sat quietly by the river, strumming a worn wooden lute. Yet whenever someone passed by, they would pause and gently rest a hand on each other's shoulder. A silent thank you. In the green fields, where the wind carried scents of dry herbs and rich earth, new trees were planted. Each tree was named after an untold story, known only to the soil and the sower. Somno planted a small oak there too, and called it Silent Trust. The Shire didn't change much, but from that day on, the children were taught not just how to pick the ripest pumpkins, but how to listen for unfamiliar footsteps in the dark. Even the lullabies changed, from simple rhymes to deeper melodies, as if each home now carried a gentle secret in every brick. Somno still walks past those old places, and every time I hear the leaves whisper, not the sound of darkness, but the voice of those who faced it and returned. Across the windswept plains of green fields, where soft grasses whisper and white daisies nod in the morning light, there lies a smooth stone resting quietly. No words carved, no plaque in sight, yet every passerby knows. Here something changed the course of Shire history. Banderas Took, known far and wide as the Bull Roarer, wasn't your typical hobbit. He was unusually tall, could ride a horse, and spoke with a voice that rumbled like thunder. And so, when the orcs crossed the border, he alone mounted his white steed, gripping an oak club as thick as a man's leg, and rode into battle. In that short, fierce clash, it was Banderas who struck the fateful blow, knocking the orc chieftain Golfimble's head clean off and into a rabbit hole. They say that's how golf was invented. But to Somno, it was no jest. It was the moment the Shire, a land of parties and pumpkins, first tasted glory, however fleeting. Years later, when Banderas was but a name in old songs, winter came early and hard. Snow blanketed the paths, cracked the dry earth, and buried every flower bed. From the north came the white wolves, cold, starving, relentless, crossing from Eredor's shadow, drawn by the scent of sheep, chickens, and hobbit breath. It was a season of silence and hunger. Hobbits, once nourished by their gardens, now shared a single carrot between them. The wolves grew bold, slinking into villages, and some nights only footprints and blood remained outside the door. The Shire, so used to peace, had to remember how to endure. And as always, the Shire endured, not with swords or spells, but with the quiet strength of community, sharing the last loaf, warming each other by the fire, and telling stories, so no one ever felt alone. After that winter, fences grew taller, seeds were traded like gold, and trees were planted around every home, a living shield. No one spoke much of what was lost, but all knew, from that season onward, the Shire was not just a land of peace, it was a land that knew how to stand strong in silence. In the west farthing of the Shire, beneath maple shadows and beside a clear stream, stood a hill called Bag End. At the top, among daisies and hibiscus hedges, was a round door painted green. Not a grand door, but one that would open a hobbit to legend. Bilbo Baggins, a proper, tidy hobbit with no taste for adventure, lived there. He adored afternoon tea, old maps, and cakes with just the right amount of icing. But one bright morning, with dew still clinging to the grass, a knock came, gentle yet loud enough to change everything. Gandalf had arrived. The Grey Wizard came without storm or flash, only a deep gaze and a slightly mischievous smile. With him were dwarves, strange folk, thick with smoke and loud with songs that made the sky feel too small. They carried an ancient map, a tale of a dragon, and an invitation for Bilbo to become their burglar on a quest to reclaim the Lonely Mountain. Bilbo hesitated, refused, stumbled, then said yes. Why? He didn't know. Maybe it was Gandalf's eyes. Maybe the wind blew different that day. And so Bilbo, who once feared stepping beyond his garden gate, now crossed hills, forests, rivers, and mountains. He met trolls, fled goblins, hid in caves, and then stumbled into a place so dark, time itself seemed to forget it existed. There he met Gollum, a strange creature, both pitiful and chilling, who lived in the shadows with a small ring. A game of riddles, a choice of survival, and the ring fell into Bilbo's hand, light as a feather, heavy as destiny. When Bilbo returned, empty-handed, torn clothes, messy hair, his eyes were no longer those of one who had never seen the world. Beneath the Shire moonlight, he stood atop Bag End, took a deep breath, and whispered, "I have gone and come back." The Shire didn't change. Still daisies, still afternoon teas, still birthday parties. But after that day, folks began to look beyond the hedgerows, because once a hobbit, small, proper, and fond of cakes, had faced a dragon. After his long journey, Bilbo Baggins returned to the Shire a changed hobbit, wealthier, wiser, with eyes that had seen more than his neighbors could imagine. He brought back treasure, grand tales, and one seemingly harmless object, a small plain gold ring carrying the shadow of an entire age. At first it was just a trick. It made him invisible, a useful prank for avoiding tedious guests. But Somno remembers. There were nights when Bilbo sat alone, under dim light, fingers caressing the ring like it was the last thing keeping him anchored. The ring began to whisper, not in words but in feeling, a sense of just one more time, of you need me. And Bilbo, once light-hearted and witty, became withdrawn, irritable. The other hobbits thought it was just age, but the truth was, he was fighting something nameless, every day, every hour. Thankfully, hobbits are a strange and sturdy folk, not easily corrupted. And so for many years, Bilbo stayed mostly himself, but eventually he longed to be free. On his 11th birthday, Bilbo threw the grandest party the Shire had ever seen. Lanterns lit the sky, sweets in 10 flavors, and every guest received a gift, classic Hobbit style. But the true gift was his farewell. He left quietly, passing the ring to his heir, Frodo Baggins, a kind, gentle young hobbit, utterly unaware that he now carried the fate of the world. The ring did not fade, it waited. And when Gandalf uncovered the truth, when the Dark Riders began to creep westward, Frodo had no choice but to leave the Shire. With Sam, Merry, and Pippin, he crossed forests, climbed mountains, slogged through marshes, battled orcs, and finally reached Mount Doom. There, with trembling hands, he cast the ring into the fire. With that, the shadow broke, but the scars remained. When Frodo returned, the Shire was no longer the same. Not in appearance, but in his heart, it no longer felt like home. Trees still bloomed, parties still had cakes, but Frodo could not find peace. The sting of the Morgul blade, Shelob's venom, and the weight of the ring had drained something from him. And so, on a misty afternoon at the Grey Havens, Frodo left, with Bilbo, Gandalf, and those touched by old light. They boarded a ship, bound west, to a land beyond sorrow. As the ship slipped into the horizon from Grey Havens, carrying Frodo, Bilbo, and the final light of an age, Samwise Gamgee stood quietly on the shore. He did not cry. Sam was never one for tears. Only the wind moved through his hair, and his calloused hands clutched the small red book Frodo had left behind. Frodo's best friend had stayed behind. The Shire then was healing. Trees cut down, gardens ruined, skies thick with smoke. But Sam carried a strange gift, a small gray wooden box, etched with a silver rune from Galadriel. Inside was a pinch of soil from Lothlorien, earth richer than any enchantment, and a single seed, small as a dewdrop. Sam knew no spells, but he knew how to plant. And from the wounded ground, a new Shire began to grow, greener, brighter, touched by the breath of faraway lands that few hobbits ever dreamed of. Sam became a mayor, a husband, a father, but most of all, a keeper of memory. Each evening by the fire, he told his children stories of a hobbit named Frodo, who carried a ring into fire so the world could keep dreaming. He spoke of Bilbo and dwarves, of elves, and of Gandalf with his pointed hat and eyes that saw too much. And with every tale he planted a seed, that no matter who you are, if your heart is true, even a small hobbit can change the world. Years later, with silver hair and a world slowly forgetting, Sam returned to the old harbor, the same place Frodo once left, and this time he too departed, carrying a heart that had fulfilled its task, seeking peace across the sea. The Shire remained, a dream held safe by hands stained with soil. And I, Somno, still tell this tale, so that when someone sits beneath moonlight and asks, "Can small folk truly make great things happen?" I will smile and say, "They have, and they will again."